Welcome to Heroic Herstories, Women in Medicine with the Katies. This podcast is to document the stories of women trailblazers in medicine in the state of Iowa. We will highlight seasoned women in medicine to create a brief oral history of their works and lives. We want to learn from their experiences, share their vast knowledge, and gain insight into the challenges they have faced. Our goal is to lift up those who have gone ahead of us and thank them for their incredible service and dedication in our wonderful field. So today we are welcoming Dr. Lois Geist. Dr. Geist, how do you want us to address you during our chat today?
Lois is great.
Lois. All right, Lois. So Dr. Geist, Lois, graduated from Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut with honors in 1978, and then from Case Western Reserve University in 1980 with her master's in science, and then went to Case Western for her MD degree, graduating in 1984. She was awarded the Lubrizol Award for Outstanding Achievement in Clinical Medicine and was inducted into the illustrious AOA Medical Honor Society during medical school. She then went to internal medicine residency at the University Hospitals of Cleveland, and to our extreme good fortune, matched into her pulmonary fellowship at the University of Iowa, completed this in 1990. Since then, she has been a veritable powerhouse here at the university. When you read a CV and there are comments like since 1997, that means that they were trying to shorten it because there were so many things. So they're really trying to condense that down, and just for upwards of 25 years, she's been doing this. She ascended the ranking ladder quickly to a full professor and has held some pretty big titles: Associate Chair for Faculty Development, Chief of Primary Care and Specialty Medicine Service Line at the Iowa City VA. She was the Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs and Development in the Carver College of Medicine. She's been the medical director at the Kirkwood Community College Respiratory Care Program, and currently is the Associate Provost for Faculty at the University of Iowa across the river.
Big deal.
And with recent developments in research funding, she's probably very busy doing that job. Her focus on faculty development and guidance of faculty through their academic careers has been really impressive. And one thing that stood out in her very epic CV is her service, not only on committees in the hospital, university, and professional boards, but in her community. As a school board member, an advisor on health issues, a member of an educational foundation, and a physician at the Free Medical Clinic. So her research experience is vast, with a focus on COPD and also on mentoring and leadership. And I would love to read the entire CV because I feel like we're shortchanging her here, but we are excited to hear from Dr. Lois Geist today.
Yay. Welcome, Dr. Geist. We're so happy to have you. Sorry, Lois. We're so happy to have you. So you may not know this about Katie and I, but we're very hard-hitting journalists, and we like to ask some really tough questions. And that's how we like to start off this podcast. So
journalism is a passion for us. It's not like our primary career. It's mostly a passion.
Yeah, obviously. But one thing Iowans love to discuss, and that you can talk about with any Iowan, is the weather. And it seems as though you have enjoyed the Midwest weather since you've been here for quite some time. And we wanted to ask you if your personality could be described in terms of a weather forecast. What would your weather forecast be?
Probably partly sunny.
Okay.
I tend to be a realist by nature, not necessarily an optimist. And I can go to the dark side fairly quickly, but prefer to be in the light when possible because I enjoy being out in the sunshine. So I would say partly sunny.
Okay.
I like that balance. It's balanced.
Yeah. Well, and I also like that you're saying partly sunny instead of partly cloudy, right? Because you're still kind of saying more on the positive side.
Well, I thought about the cloudy part, going back to something that came up earlier around just all of the things swirling around right now. Sometimes it's hard to be partly sunny, but it's a better way to approach problems if you have a positive attitude going in.
I like it. We just recounted your journey through your career, through a lot of different phases of your career. How did it all start? How did you choose to go into medicine at the very beginning?
Good question. You noted that I graduated from Trinity College and had the great fortune of not being pre-med at that point. So watched a lot of my classmates struggling, taking MCATs, getting ready to go to medical school. And I'm like, no, thank you. Never had any thought to do that. When I started my time in the lab in grad school, I quickly realized that only playing with test tubes was not going to be adequate. And at that point was also hanging around with a bunch of people who were in medical school, and it's like, yeah, I can do that. So decided to go to medical school and got lucky enough to get in. So
I love that. You're at least the second woman who said, like, I didn't want to be pre-med. Like, those people are crazy. And I just love hearing that.
they
Yeah.
they were crazy, and it was nice to not be in the pressure cooker and not have to be constantly striving for. I still did fine, obviously, but it was nice to be able to make that decision more on my own time.
Okay. Now, this is a little bit out of order because this is like bouncing way forward, but it's kind of a personal like anecdote that I remember very well that I wanted to bring up because this was probably about 10 years ago. I was like rounding on the wards and you were rounding on a weekend and you were just kind enough to kind of stop by and you just said like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And it was just after I had one of my kids. And I remember you just said, "Oh, like how many kids do you have now? Like how old are they?" And I think I had just come back from maternity leave and you said, "I think that's really smart that you're like getting back to work when they're young because like middle school and older, that's when they're really going to need you around." And I wanted to personally thank you for that because I think I was feeling a lot of like mom guilt and also I had these questions from, well-meaning questions, but from coworkers or patients being like, "Oh, you just had a baby and you're back." And so I really wanted to thank you for that. And I also know that you've done a lot of mentoring for faculty. And I'm just curious, do you ever have or I guess when you have women faculty who come to you and say like, "Gosh, how in the world am I gonna do this with like being a physician, being a mom?" Like, what advice do you give? What recommendations do you give to them?
Well, if they have the ability to make sure that they have a strong partner, that always helps, right? Um, I had and still have a very strong life partner, and that makes a huge difference in terms of being able to balance what happens. The other thing I tell people though is you do not have to be at every event that your children do because they're not going to remember. And they're not going to hold it against you if you don't make every softball game, every track and field event. Um, you just have to make choices. The other part of that is when you could still bring treats to school, you don't have to make them. You can go to the store and buy them. And physicians, quite frankly, make enough money that you can have somebody clean your house. Now you can have somebody deliver your groceries, take care of your dry cleaning. You don't have to be the superwoman. There's no reason to do that. And you have lots of choices out there that will still provide everything your family needs.
I love that. Thanks.
Very, very rational, which is hard when you're in those moments when you just have little kids. It's hard to think rationally about what your options are.
Yeah.
Well, and I was not going to be a good stay-at-home mom, and I frequently tell people that if I had stayed home, my children probably would have been dead. So
Okay. Well, I'm glad you didn't then.
no, it was
I
much
get your
better for
point.
them to be in someone else's care during the day, so then I could just come home and be mom when I came home. And it worked out very well.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thanks for that again.
And so, one of the things I think that comes up, you mentioned like missing, softball games and things. You have spent a ton of time on hospital committees and, physician society committees, which have a lot of meetings. So that's another demand on your time, even outside of your clinical work. These roles can be super thankless, can be time consuming. Tell us about why you decided to prioritize those in your career and how you saw that benefiting your whether it's your clinical career or just in general, your professional life.
So I think it's really important to have a lot of voices around the table. It offered me an opportunity to learn about systems that I perhaps might not have been as aware of. It introduced me to people because ultimately it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I then had the ability to make those connections. And then, quite frankly, if I needed something, I knew who to talk to. So internally, it was really helpful for making those connections. And then if something came up or I needed to advocate for something, I knew exactly who to talk to, and they weren't getting a cold call or a cold email. They knew who I was, and as long as I comported myself well at those meetings, they were willing to take my calls or respond to my emails or meet with me. So it provided an important bridge. Sometimes women have a tendency to not want to be seen or heard. And quite frankly, coming up, there weren't a lot of women in leadership. So it's always delightful to see the two of you leading in this way at your relatively young ages, because there just weren't great role models. Being invited to the table, being able to sit at the table was really important. The external committees, as you noted, I'm a pulmonologist, and coming through in the late 80s, early 90s, there weren't many of us. And we had a meeting at one of my earliest ATS meetings and decided that we should have a meeting of women in pulmonary medicine. And there were about 10 of us. And that was it. Yeah. It's an invasive discipline. It's, hard charging, doing all this stuff, much like cardiology. If you think about it, it's not exactly, you just don't think about it that way. And by the time I wasn't involved as much, we would have not a ballroom full, but certainly a large room full of women who were now actively involved, and subsequently women who were leaders of the organization. So if you don't show up, nobody knows you're there.
Yeah.
So showing up is half the battle.
You brought up, I have to go to this one. You brought up the ATS, and I was looking at journals to try to figure out the number of women in pulmonary medicine and critical care. And I think now they're quoting about 11% of pulmonary doctors are women, and about 25% of critical care are women. And current fellows, I think this was back in, I think it was 2 years ago, about 30% of current fellows are women. But something we saw on your CV that kind of stuck out was that it looked like you were on a committee called the University of Iowa Council on the Status of Women. And this was in 1995 to 1998. And I'm just curious, what was that about? Tell us about that.
So it's a university committee, and it's comprised of faculty, staff, and students who are interested in elevating the roles of women in the institution. I think Susan Johnson, who is an emeritus faculty member in the college, OB-GYN, I think she nominated me for that because that was still fairly early on in my career. And it was interesting. It was another way to start to meet people on the other side of the river, people who did not understand medicine, and yet had that's probably not the right way to put it, but has had very different careers, but also great stories, and just looking for ways to be able to support women and elevate the work that women do.
It's amazing. I love
Do you
that.
remember how that, whose idea that committee was, or how did they decide to do that?
It had been around forever, and I'm not sure who started it. It was not a new committee by any stretch. They'd been around for a long time. Iowa has a good track record for embracing, dare I say, diversity. I know.
She said it.
The lightning bolt is heading in my direction as we speak. And that was one of the things I believe it started in the 70s, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. It just really had a dedication to that. And you think about our university leadership, and we've had 3 women presidents in the time I've been here.
Yeah.
Which is pretty impressive for a relatively small university in the middle of the Midwest. So,
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, certainly unexpected. I agree.
well, and be proud of our own medical school. the first medical school west of the Mississippi to admit men and women on an equal basis. So
Amazing.
we have a lot to be proud of there.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the things that Katie and I, like, the generation that we're from, I think we take that a lot more for granted than, I mean, that's a good thing to take that for granted in some ways, and that we've been allowed to, because a lot of our classes were essentially 50% women. And I think as we've been talking to sort of women who came ahead of us and are farther along in their career, that was definitely not the case. When you describe how few women pulmonologists there were at the beginning of your time with the ATS and at those meetings, those pulmonary meetings, that is something that's very different now, which I think it's important to us to highlight how much we appreciate people who made it that way,
Yeah.
One way that you've, I think, been really active in advancing the careers of everybody in pulmonology, but also I'm sure a lot of women, is you're served as a reviewer for a lot of journals, abstracts, awards. So this is a kind of mentorship, right? You're, essentially opening the gates for people to get these awards that lead to promotions, that lead to moving their career along. How did you get into those roles, or how did you decide to put your valuable time into those types of things?
Well, a lot of it, again, goes back to who you know. The person who was my division director and my lab mentor through my fellowship, and then when I came onto the faculty, was Gary Honeyhockey, and was very well connected through the ATS. The meeting that I told you about with the first group of women was during his presidency for the ATS, and so was very supportive of having that meeting actually happen. So he, they need a reviewer. Here, you're a reviewer. They need someone to review these awards. Here, this is an opportunity, and really did support my career, including having 2 children during my fellowship and early faculty position, at a time when women weren't doing that in academic medicine. So, I again had people that paid attention, and made sure I had opportunities to be able to participate in things that, that helped my career, but also allowed me to help others.
Well, and a lot of that has to do with you saying yes to those opportunities too. I think when you get them, so I think there's plenty of times where either we don't perceive the importance of how big a deal they'll be to our career in the future, or we just feel overwhelmed at the time they're offered. But I think opting in and saying yes and taking a little bit of a risk seems like it paid off for you over the course of your career.
Just yes, to a big degree. I also think it is important to know when to say no.
Sure. Tell us about that. Is there anything that you learned about that? Because we both need that.
Love that, please.
That may take a whole nother time that we could get together and talk about that. I chose to do things that were clearly, selfishly were going to help my career.
Mm-hmm.
There were certainly other things I did say no to that were not going to help my career, especially in those early years. I was on the tenure track. I needed to pay attention to my research. So the things that I said yes to early on were really going to give me status in the research community. And I needed that. So it's, as I tell people, it's, a judicious yes and a graceful no. And if you say no, you say no, but come back to me at some other time, because right now I can't, but I'm always willing to consider it going forward. And anytime you can volunteer up somebody else that would say yes, then you've made another kind of connection. But the ability to say no gracefully is a skill.
I love that. I was writing it down.
Wrote that down.
Did you write it, or did you put it in your phone, Katie?
Put it in my phone.
I knew it. I saw her. I was like,
I just don't have any paper.
I'm the old school pen paper lady over here. But okay. So we're saving that quote. That's a good one.
That's a good one. And so, yeah, that is help. That makes you feel better about saying no, I suppose. If you're like, no, but Katie would do it.
Thanks.
I'm going to start doing that. You know, Katie Harris,
They think we're one and the same person, Katie. So that's not going to work. I'm sorry.
She always says yes. You should ask her.
Well, we, your research was obviously a big part of your career, and you have very varied research from what I was looking through. I mean, you have the basic science stuff, you have like how to start a lung transplant program, you have studying mentorship. I was just curious, that's not a linear path. It doesn't look like. So how did that all happen? And I guess like what drove you in those different directions?
So I came here in my fellowship to do basic science research, and probably still am an immunologist at heart. And having that opportunity was really great. And I loved being in the laboratory. I generally had good hands and could get the experiments done. What I lacked was the ability to do that 5-10 year planning thing. So if I would have been somebody's really good research assistant, but as a PI in the lab, I did okay, but it was clearly not going to be my career trajectory. However, my research informed my clinical care. So my first clinical job out of residency or out of fellowship was to be the medical director of the lung transplant program. It was very small, nothing like what it is now. And Julia Klesny-Tate gets all the credit for that because she has done an amazing job with that program. But at that time, it was myself and the surgeon, and we just signed people up and took care of patients. And so Julie is really the lead author on that article on how to build a transplant program. And she graciously included me in part because of the history with the program. But it was very much informing the work that I was doing in the laboratory due to the infectious disease aspect of it and the immunologic aspect of what happens when somebody gets transplanted. As that, you change things over a 30+ year career. But mentoring has always been something I benefited from very much, and certainly wanted to give back, and have had lots of opportunities to do that, both in the supportive way as well as in the corrective way, if you will. But it's the best part of any job that I've ever had, has been able to sit down with somebody with their CV and help them plan their career. That's always been where I've gotten the most satisfaction from the things that I do, and also the most gratitude, which isn't why I do it, but it just feels good to know that you've helped somebody and then they've done what it is they wanted to do. They've been able to achieve whatever it is in their careers. So there's so much reward there, and it takes nothing other than sitting down and listening and thinking strategically.
Yeah. It's kind of nice to be that like outside reviewer of someone's career, right? And you can be like, I see this path, but they oftentimes don't, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what would happen, right? It's like they can't see it. You're in the middle of it, and so it's really hard to be able to figure out that yes, there is more than one path.
Well, and I think for early career and maybe even mid-career folks, I think it's especially valuable, even if you're not like if you're on your first grant or in your first couple of years on the faculty, because I think it's really hard sometimes to remember how long careers are, ideally, So you're like, you're in your 40s and you're sort of like figuring out what you're going to do. But I think you could be a really good person to remind somebody like, no, actually, like you have years, like they're like, you might not even start. Because a lot of the things that have made you that have really built your name were things that you didn't probably start until you were in your 50s, like that you were really like moving up in the university and then moving into your job across the river in the more recent parts of your career. So you've accomplished things now where I think there's plenty of people who would not, or worse, would sort of be like, I got to get this done now. I got to make these choices now. And it's like, no, actually, maybe there's a long game here that we're playing that might be interesting to talk to people about.
And that's one of my first questions that I often ask people is, where do you see yourself?
Mhm.
And then how do we get there? I don't think anybody, well, that's not any, I think there are people who come into their careers thinking they want to be a dean or a president or whatever. That certainly isn't where I started, but things happen, right? And then you say yes to things, and then people go, oh, you said yes to that, so here's another opportunity, and you go, well, that looks interesting, so let's go that pathway. And just being willing to at least consider it as opposed to just saying no. Even if you do say no, that's okay. It's just thinking about it in advance and giving it the time it should take to really make the decision.
Katie, I don't know, I feel like there is a big narrative in the last 10 years when you read I don't know, stuff about careers or whatever, there's a lot of you need to say no more.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's true, Katie?
Oh, absolutely.
For our age people?
I was actually going to bring that up earlier because I feel like, I mean, I don't want to speak badly, but there's all this balance and, but some of that extra stuff has brought me more joy than I could have ever imagined, So I don't know, Katie, is that what you were getting at? Saying no to everything is not a good way to go.
Right. And I think obviously everything, it's a balance. It's partly sunny, right? You're going to say yes to things and being thoughtful and deliberate about what you do say yes to, and then saying no in a way that doesn't close the door, but a gracious no that doesn't slam the door shut. But I think it's nice to hear that opting into things is going to be a positive, is not going to immediately overwhelm you and make your career not sustainable. I think that's the story that I see when I read your CV, is saying yes to things actually led you down some really positive paths.
Yeah.
And the other part about, saying yes and saying no is, again, I like what you said, Katie, on my right, that it's the things that bring you joy. Our jobs are hard, and we have a lot of times when it's hard to find the joy in what we do because we deal with people who are struggling often. So it's a great opportunity to say, somebody thinks I'm going to be good at this, which is always a compliment. And I think it could be a lot of fun. And ultimately, you're in a career for a really long time. And if you're not having fun, you're in the wrong career.
Yeah. I always comfort myself with some of these decisions because I'm in my clinical world, some of these decisions are really life and death. This is not life and death if I'm on this committee. If I'm mad at it, I'll just say, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this. I'm going to step down, So that's kind of nice.
Well, and the other piece is negotiating away things that you don't want to be able to do something you do want. And the plate doesn't get any bigger.
Yeah.
So something needs to come off, and that can be part of the saying yes is, okay, I've got these other 4 things. One of them has to go. Is there someone else who can take that? Otherwise I can't do this. And being very clear about that so that you actually you're not just adding, you're trading something away that maybe no longer, that was fun at the beginning, but no longer brings you joy. And you would like it to bring someone else joy.
Yeah. Give somebody else a chance.
Yeah.
You work with a lot of different groups of people inside and outside of the medical school. Is there a group or a section of learners that is most exciting for you to work with? Is it medical students or residents or faculty?
Well, looking at my career trajectory, I have spent most of my time taking care of faculty. I have often said that I find students to be too whiny. Sorry. Having said that, I loved teaching the first semester of the first year of medical school. I loved doing the communication skills sessions. It was just always so fun to see people figure it out And then to see them, on the wards 2 years later and watching them go, oh, okay, you were listening, you were paying attention. Or seeing them in clinic or something like that. And obviously working with the fellows was always a great joy, because they would challenge me to be better. I needed to know, I needed to learn, I needed to make sure that they weren't getting too far ahead of me. So it was good to have those kinds of conversations and watch them grow as well. I didn't spend as much time with residents just because of the nature of a lot of the work that I did, but I'd see them as first year medical students and then see them on the wards as residents, and that was always very, very rewarding to see that. But most of my career I've spent taking care of faculty.
Well, and I think that's a forgotten part of the medical school in a lot of ways. Like the sort of a lot of time and attention is focused on graduate medical education and undergraduate medical education. But I think when you think about how do we keep our faculty engaged and continuing to learn and continuing to develop their careers, because there's plenty of reasons not to stay on the faculty, right? Like we could all go get jobs anywhere. And so trying to make being on the faculty a valuable, productive part of your career in addition to your clinical work, I think it is really important. And I think that's something that we don't necessarily pay as much attention to probably as a college.
No, I think that's true. And that's unfortunate because, as you said, you could go out and get a job anywhere. And academic medicine is not the most efficient place to spend your time.
That is true.
Very true. But I think like people like you have made it really like, I remember I went to one of your like sessions about promotion, or maybe it was like one of my new faculty things back when I first, 13 years ago or whatever. And I remember sitting in one of those groups. We had to break up into groups and talk about, like, I don't know, we were asking questions or something. And I said, so what is the thing, like, if I get promoted, like, what do I get? Like, what do I get? And they were like, and like, there was silence. And I was sitting with Rachel, Dirks, and Katie, and we were in this meeting together, and we both started at the same time. And we were both like, okay, we're waiting for this answer. And everybody's like, not really anything. And I'm like, is it like more money? And they're like, oh, maybe, I don't know. And I'm like, do I get better parking? And they're like, no. And I was like, so it's just like the satisfaction of being promoted. And they were like, yeah, kind of. And I'm like, okay, like I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything, but yeah, but I think so, like engaging people in that process and giving them the sort of that, the why of why they should stay engaged, I think is a really important job that you've done really well, because you led that meeting. You were in charge, and here I am. I got promoted.
See?
Not all the way, not as high as Katie, but
Well, I was just thinking though, the reason like my why was the minute I heard the stats about how many, like the percentage of women full professors in academic medicine, it's incredibly low. And I was like, I'm doing it just for that. Like, I want to increase that percentage.
Atta girl.
It's important. That's right. That's right. Yeah. I just had a question about the faculty mentoring, because I still, admittedly, I feel a little uncomfortable mentoring, I think, faculty, because I'm like, oh, I just haven't been here quite long enough. Like, oh, I don't think I've had the experience. So I guess how did you manage that? How did you become comfortable with that?
For one thing, I think we put too much emphasis on the term mentoring. Sometimes it's just having a conversation, and it's giving people an opportunity to be heard, to hear what their concerns might be, to hear what sorts of things they might be dealing with. So just giving, much like we do with our patients, giving them the space to tell their story. And then if you can help them tell their story better, they can be more effective on their academic side to then be able to promote their careers and do the kinds of things that they want to do. And then telling them that they are good enough. And, women in particular are constantly second guessing themselves as to whether or not you're good enough. Yes, you are. Otherwise you wouldn't be where you are. So play to your strengths. Don't do things that are not in your wheelhouse or that you're not comfortable. Well, it's okay to get out of your comfort zone periodically, so I don't want to say that. But just being able to tell people that it's okay to take a risk or to do something a little bit different or to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, it doesn't have to be like this, you are assigned a mentor. And I think that's where the heavy part comes in. I mean, I've had tons of people, if I told them that they had mentored me, they would never believe it.
Yeah.
But it was a one-off conversation, or it was, an opportunity to learn something, and I walked away with something new. That was mentoring.
Good
Well,
point.
and it's like your conversation with Katie that you probably
Yeah.
don't remember.
I do not
She
remember.
does.
But I still remember where I was on 6RC. Like I still have I know exactly, because it was just such a relief to me. Like that was just it was such a big moment for me. Yeah.
Well, good.
I think everybody probably has those
Right.
conversations that the person who gave them the best advice they've ever gotten doesn't even remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty wild.
Yeah.
We have all had those conversations.
Yeah. Katie, did you have other things before we go into rapid fire or no?
I wanted to talk about the free medical clinic a little bit,
Yeah.
because we know that Lois has been as into the most special areas, of lung transplant medicine before that was even really a thing. And now you spend time at the free medical clinic where you're kind of seeing all comers doing all types of things. So tell us about your decision to spend time there and what it's done for you.
So the decision was mostly because I, again, felt like I needed to be giving back. I've had a very specialized practice, but this was an opportunity to get back to basics and to understand what it's like to practice in a very resource limited environment. It was another opportunity to interact with the students on a different plane, because that's, you sit there and you listen to the students and then you go see the patients, but helping them shape the way they wanted to approach a patient or the questions that they wanted to ask. It's another opportunity to work on their presentation skills, but it's also clearly having an impact on a community that often isn't seen. And I had wanted to do it for a long time. I'd finally reached the point where I had no other obligations, that spending a couple nights a month there was not going to make a big difference to me. And it was going to make a big difference to other people. And the clinic is really a great resource for that. And now I'm on their board. So there you go. Be careful what you wish for.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, the community is very thankful for that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we're entering the fun part. Even more fun. I don't know. Fun. No, even more fun. Not funner.
It's funner.
Most fun. Part where we're just gonna ask you some fun questions and see how it goes. So, first one: if you could go back to yourself and meet yourself on your first day of intern year, what would you tell yourself?
It'll be okay. It's
It's the
not
most
as,
common answer by far.
it's
Yes.
not as scary as it looks.
Oh gosh, it was so scary though, right?
Oh, I remember my first night on call, or first time I wrote orders and was looking over my shoulder to find out who was going to co-sign them, and then realized that there wasn't anybody there.
Yeah. It's
So
terrifying.
it was terrifying. And my first rotation was at the VA. So that was even more
Mine too.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was no one around.
And that was probably before CPRS too, huh?
No, we had CPRS.
You had CPRS? Because that's what I remember. My first night was at the VA as well. And I was like, I don't know what this is, this system here.
Yeah,
Like, this is bad. At least at the university, it was handwritten orders. I'm like, I can write. That's what I can do. But
Well, and I think CPRS at that point was not doing order entry, but all your notes
I
went
see.
in there. But because I do remember writing orders at the VA. But it was a time.
It was a time.
It was a time. What's one thing, I mean, you spent a lot of time in the ICU. What is one thing in internal medicine that grosses you out?
I'm going to guess it's not sputum. That's Katie's thing.
No.
She doesn't like sputum.
No.
I was like, I think Lois handles sputum.
I can handle sputum. Toenails that have not been handled. I always found that really disgusting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, feet are ugly anyway, but
Yeah.
gross
Yeah.
yellow toenails.
I have people apologize about their feet. I look at people's feet all the time. And I have people apologize for their feet all the time. And I'm like, you can't scare me with feet at this point. Like,
But you're like, just don't cough on me.
right. If you cough up a little bit of phlegm, I'm going to have to leave the room.
Yeah, I could.
I mean, I feel like every internal medicine person has a story from residency about it. Some poor person with maggots in their feet. Like, I think everybody's been there, and that must have been really hard for you. I'm sorry if you had to deal with that.
Well, it's just their toenails. I mean,
She's okay with maggots, not
yeah,
toenails.
That's
no,
right.
yeah.
Wow.
They're just
a big problem with
there's
toenails.
it takes a lot to gross me out, which is the bottom line. But,
Clearly.
Yeah. We love asking women doctors about menopause, and we just wanted to hear any thoughts, anything you'd like to share with our many 10 listeners.
But growing up, I'm sure. I have to admit, it was sort of a non-event for me. I was very fortunate. Rare hot flashes, rare night sweats. I didn't feel like it was the end of my world. I think that's familial because that's what I heard from my mom and my sisters. It was like, eh. So, I did all the reading on whether or not I should be doing hormone replacement, and the answer was no. So honestly, I was very fortunate. It was a non-event.
That's great. That's great. And you were in practice over the time when hormone therapy really went through its big swings in terms of, where it is in the culture and in medicine.
Yep.
So it sounds like you did your own research.
I did do my own research and also had an excellent OB-GYN who said no. I said, okay. So yeah, I mean, the advantage of being able to go and talk the language, right? We have that real advantage as physicians where we can go in and have those kinds of conversations. And I was prepared to say no if I was going to be told to do it. And it was like, nah, no, we're good. Like, okay. It's fine.
I'm sorry. I was just a little surprised recently. I feel like there is a lot more talk about perimenopause and menopause, but maybe in some channels that don't provide the best medical information for people. I mean, I guess we see this in all of medicine, but I'm just like, TikTok is not the place to get your advice about hormone replacement therapy. I'm sorry.
That would be correct.
Go to YouTube.
That and Dr. Oz, just don't go there.
Don't go there. Yeah. All right.
Any embarrassing situation you could share with us? Like Katie dropped her pager in a toilet once.
That's just one of many embarrassing stories, though, frankly.
Yeah, she does have a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if this one is embarrassing or just entertaining. So as a resident, I took care of a patient, a lovely older gentleman who I took care of him for like 5 days. I'd gone in and introduced myself and all that stuff. And as he was getting ready to leave the hospital, he asked me if he was going to get to see the doctor before he left. Fast forward 4 months, I'm in the emergency room doing my ER rotation, and he rolls in the door. Did not recognize me, but told me the story about how he had been in the hospital and had been there for all these days. And there was this very nice young woman who was taking care of him. And on his way out the door, he found out she was a doctor. And here you are as a woman doctor. I mean, that is
amazing.
And he had no idea I was the same person.
Did you tell him?
Did that make you feel a little bit better that like he just doesn't? Well, but no, he remembered the episode.
I mean,
maybe he has face blindness. No,
and you see so many people when you're in the hospital anyway but yeah. So that wasn't exactly embarrassing. I actually found it humorous. Embarrassing, it takes a lot to embarrass me because we end up in situations all the time where things happen. So,
That's true.
and I would not be embarrassed by dropping my pager in the toilet. So maybe, maybe my threshold is different. I'm not sure.
I think I was more embarrassed when I like took it to the pager office and I'm like, it was in the toilet. Like, what do you
And they're
want me
like,
to do?
ew.
I know. My kids were like, was it a dirty toilet or a clean toilet? I'm like, is there any toilet that's really clean? But
No, but that's a big difference.
yeah, it is. It is.
It is
Yeah.
a big
I mean,
difference.
yeah. Different topic. Favorite candy? I just love to know candy.
Oh, peanut M&Ms.
Oh,
Ooh.
they're so good. What about
Frozen,
peanut butter?
frozen peanut M&Ms.
Frozen?
Okay.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
Okay. Do you like the peanut butter M&Ms?
The peanut
at
butter
all?
M&Ms are good. Peanut,
Okay.
regular
Okay, but
peanut.
that
I
could-
can't really, and maybe this is like an age thing, but I can't really taste the peanut butter.
Okay.
So I don't,
Okay.
I don't get the full benefit,
get
but the peanuts I can taste.
And the
My dad-
texture. It's also got an
Yeah.
extra crunch in it.
It is, yep, it is a different texture, but you'll be amazed. Frozen will change your life.
Oh, I pretend I'm not eating very much candy, but I'm eating trail mix all of the time, which has candy in it. So,
Yes, it does.
Sure does.
Katie, did you have others?
I don't think so. I was just thinking, is there anything you think we missed, Lois?
Yeah.
We tried to get to all the highlights of your CV. Is there anything we didn't ask you about that you want to tell us? Any more things we should write down?
We will.
Because I'll write it down.
I don't think so.
We do a historical woman in medicine. I don't know if you wanted to get going though. If you don't want to stick around for it, you can cut out. But I just have a little paragraph to talk about one historical woman in medicine. Would you like to hear it?
I would love to hear it.
Okay. I kind of picked her because of you. So, okay. All right. So, our historical woman in medicine today is, I must just say, like, first off, as I'm researching women to talk about, it really made me so happy and excited because the whole time I was just smiling, thinking, like, how wonderful these women are. But this woman that I want to talk about today is Dr. Olga Jonasson. I'm hoping I'm saying her name right. But I first found her on the website for the University of Illinois Chicago because they were talking about Women in Medicine Month. And I also learned from Katie White that I need to do like better digging, being a better journalist. So I was trying to dig around a little bit more. And I found a lot more about her on the old World Wide Web. So she was born in 1934 in Peoria, Illinois, and was inspired to go into medicine by her mother, who was a nurse, and her father, who was a clergyman, who would take her to the hospital when he was visiting with people of the church that he was visiting while they were inpatient. She received her medical degree from University of Illinois in 1958 and proceeded to a surgery residency, which was very uncommon for women at that time. And she completed that at the University of Illinois. And then she completed 3 different fellowships, including immunochemistry at Walter Reed and then transplant immunology at Mass General. She then returned to the University of Illinois in 1967 and started the Division of Transplantation. She performed the first ever kidney transplant in the state of Illinois in 1968. She also set up a statewide histocompatibility testing laboratory for donor and recipient matching. She had a storied career, chief of surgery at University of Illinois, chair of surgery at the Ohio State University. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't capitalize that in the script, but the Ohio State University, and also served many professional societies and just looked like an all-around rock star. And with her transplant interest, I just thought, oh, that's so cool because you've done a lot with lung transplantation. So, and similar interests there. So,
Immunology.
yeah, pretty amazing woman. So,
Yeah, being a surgeon in the 60s.
Ooh,
I
Can't even
can't
imagine.
imagine.
no, right? And that's yeah. So that was our woman in medicine history today. So
Thanks, Katie.
you are welcome, Katie. And thank you mostly to Lois. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, this is fun, and thanks for doing this. This is a great thing for you to be doing, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, well, you are more than
Thanks for
welcome.
saying yes.
Yes, exactly.